Hey everyone, Vito from MoreBeer here. We're outside of Oak Barrel Winecraft in Berkeley, California. They're one of the oldest homebrew shops in the nation. They're almost 70 years old. So we're gonna go in and talk to them about that. I think right now it's an important time to talk about supporting your local homebrew shop. So we're gonna go in and talk to them about their history, what they're doing to stay relevant in this new world. So let's go on in. Homer, Stacey, thanks for having us. This is awesome. I've been looking forward to this. Glad to be here, glad to talk about stuff. Homer, let's start with you. You started here when you were 15 years old?
That's correct. A mere young lad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a couple years ago, though.
Just a couple years ago, yeah.
That's right,
So you guys opened in 1957. And I want to introduce you because I thought this was really cool. I was just looking at Sullivan from 21st Amendment. Sean Sullivan.
Oh yeah.
He refers to you as every brewer's Jedi Master. To me, that, as a Star Wars fan, I think that's really cool. And just, I mean, that's, as long as I've been in homebrewing, you know, you've been a legend. So I just want to, you know, give you your flowers on that. And then also, Chris, our president of MoreBeer, and Olin, they wanted to say thank you guys. This shop was what they look to as like a baseline model of what a homebrew shop should be, you know. So just wanted to pass that along and say
that's almost too kind.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it. Yeah. No, definitely.
So tell us, 1957, before I was born, a different time. So you've been in the Bay Area homebrew scene, and I guess it was at that time more winemaking scene because homebrewing wasn't even legal.
Well, the business was started in 1957. It was started by John Bank. And this actually was a winery, a full-fledged winery at that point in time. And so therefore he advanced and moved into, you know, the home brewing and home winemaking portion of it later on, like in the mid-60s or so. Because even there was a full-fledged winery, he built the building just right here in the middle of this block.
Oh, and so there was no even building at the time.
That's right. It was the building, the original building was down here at Tokyo Fish Market, which is a Berkeley institution also. And it was in front of it. And so then he built the building in the middle of the block, and that was in the early 60s. And then he built another building later on in the late 60s over on the University of Curtis. And in that building there, it was a winery, but then he also opened up what he called Oak Barrel Winecraft. In other words, he started selling wine and beer making supplies. And that was in the late 60s.
Late 60s. What was the scene, for lack of better terms? Like, was there a lot of home winemakers, home beer makers at the time? Obviously, maybe not as popular as it is today, but.
No, it was fairly popular, you know, but it was more or less sort of an underground thing because people were worried about, you know, getting caught making beer because it wasn't legal at that point in time. Winemaking had been made legal. You could, you know, produce like 200 gallons of wine per year.
So it was legal to sell the equipment and ingredients to make beer, but you weren't allowed to make it.
You weren't allowed to make it, just like it's legal to sell the equipment to make a bomb.
Okay.
But you aren't allowed to make it.
Or I was thinking distilling.
Or distilling.
Yeah.
Yes.
Either one, that's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes distilling is a bomb.
That's a good point too.
And it's happened on more than one occasion.
That's why I've kind of stayed away from distilling because, you know, it's dangerous. So, okay, and then 1979 you said is...
Well, the legalization came along later on. It was in 79 that, in other words, Alan Cranston, who was the senator here in California at that time, got the bill pushed through with the help of a number of people here in Berkeley. You know, there was another shop called Wine and the People at the time that had a lot of people with political aspirations, and they actually helped make this bill that was pushed through the Senate that allowed homebrewing to be legalized, and Jimmy Carter was the one that signed it into law.
That's amazing, and I think we're all thankful for that happening because it created, you know, the homebrew scene as I know it. Let's jump a little forward to like the 90s. That's when I started homebrewing. And I think it started becoming a little more popular right around then. There was more homebrew shops.
Well, there was really a surgence of homebrewing in the mid 90s because that's when you got more breweries are starting to develop and grow because people were home brewers. And they had the foregleam at that point in time was to, in other words, take it and start a business with it and start making beer that they like to drink. So that's the trick part. It's what occurred is that people started making beer that they wanted to drink, as opposed to having to drink just the mainstream beers that were out there. And so therefore, that's why you have that array of different grains and different grist that you can add to it to create whatever flavor you're looking for. And also that's where you got all these different varieties of hops now, that you can just change the flavor profile of the beer just with the hops themselves. And now you have yeast that you can use that's going to actually change. So therefore, there's so many different variables into making a great beer. You know, and really the main ingredient in the whole brewing process is that yeast.
Yep, yeah, that drives most of the flavor.
Oh yeah.
You brought up an interesting subject that I think is worth mentioning, especially from a, we're talking homebrew shops and the culture around those, but how many commercial brewers and pro breweries started from homebrewing and how it has influenced, numerous brewers came up through here. And
one I always like to mention is Sierra Nevada. You know, I mean, it was in '76 that Ken Grossman was going here to UC Berkeley, and Ken Grossman was buying supplies at the shop back then. You know, he was brewing beer, and so he was already honing his craft, and he was getting things in place to start that brewery in the '80s.
So Ken Grossman bought supplies, was homebrewing.
That's correct.
From you, or from here, yeah.
From here,
Yeah,
right.
that's amazing.
And then after you go from there, then you get into the other breweries that were already started, like Anchor Steam, which has always been, a help as far as the home brewing community was concerned throughout the years. Anchor Steam always gave back to home brewers. You know, Fritz Maytag was actually wonderful in that regard, just as Ken Grossman is wonderful in that regard. He always gives back to home brewers. And you see that in a lot of places that are established as breweries.
Heretic's great home brewers.
Right. Yeah. Jamil's great at giving back.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you see that with O'Sullivan. Even he's good at giving back. All these guys, you can go down. You can go down like Roger.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, come on. All these guys are really, they're into it because they realize that, hey, they've got a pretty nice life due to the fact they're doing something that they just love.
Yeah.
And so therefore, they're willing to give back in that regard. Even Vinny up at Russian River always comment, you know, how he's always willing to give back, and how that really he was one of the innovators of, in other words, just trying to use other things in making a batch of beer, just to bring out different flavors in it, and look what he's developed. You know, I mean he has a cult following like no other brewery. You know, and you respect that.
I think, definitely the sense of community within the craft beer and homebrewing industry has always been one thing that attracted me to it so much. Is there's a community, there's this sharing. Like when I was a commercial brewer, you know, the Bay Area Brewers Guild, we'd share yeast, hops, grains, like, and I think I'm sure there's other industries where you do this, but the collaboration, like, you know, businesses getting together that I guess in theory are competing, but not, you know, really, but doing stuff together. That sense of community has always been huge to me, and I believe the homebrew store kind of is where that, you know, this is where we gather, this is where we have a beer together, this is where we talk to people that are legends and educate and teach us to share that community. So, you know, it's I don't know, it's just super important, and I'm glad we're chatting about that and promoting that.
That's the most important thing I think that needs to be maintained, is the community itself amongst brewers, amongst people in the whole industry. Whether if you're just
winemakers.
One starting off, or winemaker also. You know, I mean, being willing to give of your experiences so that you can help others even better their experience. You know, and so what you don't find is you don't find enough of that. You know, and that's important, because that's how you keep the craft alive. That's how you keep it going. Because now you have people striving to do other different things. And so therefore, when you do that, and when you're giving back, I mean, that's good for this part of your body right here, as well as this part of your body right here.
Yeah.
Because that is that's true love toward your brother and sister throughout life.
Amen to that.
Absolutely.
So Stacey, let's talk about your background experience. So November 2020, you took bought Oak Barrel, the owner now.
Yeah.
So during the pandemic, right? And I guess where I'm going with this is the pandemic, how it kind of, you know, we all retreated to our corners and but now it's starting to open back up. Just tell me a little bit about, you know.
Sure, yeah. I was in talks of taking over the shop before the pandemic hit.
Okay.
Once the pandemic hit, I couldn't take it over until my ex-father-in-law passed away. He had ALS. So that delayed us for a bit. And then I took it over, and Bernie retired, and he's still around. I just talked to him yesterday. He's amazing. He's going to be coming to the bottle shares.
That's awesome. That's
Right?
great. So he's helping kind of keep keep you going.
Oh yeah,
you know,
he's always
the
right
ins
there.
and outs of the industry.
Whenever we call him, whenever we have an event that we're hanging out at, he definitely still participates.
So he owned it since the 90s or the 80s?
Right.
80s.
It was in
Okay.
early 90s.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
Yep. So I bought it. I've been a home brewer for I don't know 10, 12 years, and I made a business plan about 15 years ago to have a semi-retirement, which is what this is for me, out of marketing and experience design, and just wanted to have a shop where I could be a crazy old lady and do whatever I want.
I love that.
I omitted the F word in the middle of that.
Yeah, no,
But
it's all right.
good. You can do whatever the fuck I want.
Yes.
So this gave it more structure than what I had in mind, but I love it. I'm really into fermentation. I'm really into healthy eating, and Whole Foods, not the store. But I love brewing. I like making things. I like the process of things. I'm a photographer. I do the chemistry and photography. So
That's one thing I do see amongst home brewers, for the most part, is so my love was food first, and just like taste and flavors, right? And I think you see that with brewers too. If you're into, making your own beer, you're generally into cooking for yourself, making flavors across the board, So
Right.
it's I love that. And you guys do beer and winemaking, obviously, but like
and cheese and
vinegar,
kombucha, water kefir. There's so many people coming here for such a broad array of things. Mycology, weed growing.
Nice, yeah.
Right? Apparently,
Yeah.
organic Pilsner malt is really good for that. I
Interesting. I never
actually
knew
don't
that.
know. I
So,
don't know.
I learned. Yeah. So we talked about COVID. How did that affect your business?
Yeah,
But-
what happened was that people started to not want to come in, and people wanted to, in other words, just order it online and then just come in and pick it up. Some even want us to bring it out to their cars and put it in the back of their car, and that way they had no
Curbside
contact.
pickup.
That's right, no contact at all, and
But
that
it
was
spiked.
okay.
Like a lot of people.
Right, and a number of people did that, and so, and there was nothing wrong with that at all. I mean, the only thing that it did do was it made people a little bit less aware of the fact of being able to come into the store and fill out their own recipes themselves, because that's really how you get to know exactly what you're doing. It's just like cooking, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, if you can't go to the store and shop and pick out the pieces that you need for a recipe, well, then you're really not going to never really fully understand what that recipe is all about. And so that's one of the main things of being able to come into a shop and be able to put together your own recipe, so that you can really become familiar with every grain, with every hop, with your water profile that you need to make for whatever you're making, and also that's important, being able to taste those things that you're going to put into it to see exactly what you're going to achieve or come up with later on. But that's what people have gotten away from, and I think that sort of takes you away from brewing in some ways, because in other words, it can't always be just a one trick, easy to do, throw it in the pot and let's go. So I think that as time goes on and people, get to the point once again where they're not feeling apprehensive about being around other people, they're going to come back into the store and start doing those things again. And I think by doing that, you're able to make a better product later on.
How's it going?
To see this almost brought a tear to my eye. The reason I got into beer judging was Lee Sheppard. I was telling you, this is like my favorite interview, and I'm just loving it. But then I walked over there and I saw Lee Sheppard. That's the reason I got into beer judging. He's the one who, Vito, you're into all these competitions, you're coming, you're doing that. Like, we really need more beer judges. So I got into judging after he passed away, and then when I was president of Homebrew of Doe's, we created like a BJCP program to create judges in his honor. So I don't know.
Oh, that's sweet.
I guess what I'm just saying is this interview is important to me, and then seeing things like that, just, I don't know, just really, just a good vibe. So, anyways,
Yeah,
all right, let's dive back in.
Library.
Let's talk about some of the unique things you guys do. To bring people into the place, classes, bottle share, you'd mentioned that. Let's go over some of that kind of stuff to share with other people. And other
Sure,
shop
yeah.
owners.
A great segue is coming out of, sort of coming out of COVID-ish. Now that people are feeling more comfortable being around each other, we started in March with bottle share. People come in from, like I said, from all different types of making of stuff. We haven't had anybody bring cheese in yet, but I'm sure they will. And just share it, provide, input, direction, ask questions, learn stuff, share resources. That's been awesome. The classes have been another way to expose people to new things that they weren't sure of. Like, we've been doing different types of brewing techniques. We did a brew in a bag class, which helped people go from extract brewing to the next step, all grain, but with little investment. Just get a bag and you can go ahead and do that, and that was very successful. We've had a lot of people very excited about what they can do with that. We're doing a all-in-one brew demo coming up next weekend. Then we have more kind of niche classes coming up. We have the cask conditioning with Dave McLean, from founder of Magnolia Brewing,
yeah.
but also a co-founder of Admiral Maltings.
Admiral Malting as well, yeah.
So he's been doing a lot of classes here because he's my boyfriend, and he wants to give back to the community and help people take the step forward to do stuff at home that they enjoy in the world, and also he shares a passion for. He recently did a demo on how to do an English. I think he did English bitter.
Bitter.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
yeah. He did a demo
Love that
and
stuff.
discussion, and those classes are really special because, and we'll do more of them with more people. I know Shauna Sullivan from 21st Amendment wants to come in. He was just here with Dave doing a brew day, but he wants to come in and teach a class.
On Instagram, yeah.
That was very fun. That was really fun, and what a great thing to be a home brewer and be able to watch them brew and ask questions and actually watch them figure out a new system that they haven't brewed on before. Which is why the beer is called Ask Homer, because they had to ask him so many questions. It was hilarious.
That's awesome.
I
love tying in the local brewmasters who started as home brewers, and giving back to the community. Goes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Right, and in that same vein, we're gonna start reaching out to the local breweries and brewers and put together kits based on recipes that are inspired by their flagship beers.
Awesome. Yeah, I see you guys. You do your own kits as well.
We do our own kits.
Yep.
Absolutely. Homer is just formulating a new kit. I think we just kicked the keg on that IPA, actually.
Oh, the IPA's gone.
Yeah, the Summit. Summit
Looking
based.
forward to trying some of that.
I
Sandbreel's
think I
delicious,
kicked
by
it
the
at
way.
the end of the
Thank
day. Oh yeah, this was brewed by
Santiago, who's the head brewer now at Faction.
Oh, okay.
And Tom, who's the head brewer now at Federation. Both
Tom
used to work here.
I know
Both of them
Tom
did.
from Benoit Casper.
That's right.
And from working here. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Santiago worked here too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was really fun for SF Beer Week. We had them come in and brew here and brew a beer. It was all California ingredients. It was Admiral Maltings, and we had Thompson hops from out in Tracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So local grown hops
Local
as
ground,
well.
yeah, which we're starting to carry too. And Homer came up with the recipe, and that's what we're drinking.
That's delicious,
Yeah.
man. Thank you,
It's
guys.
so good.
Easy drinking beer.
It's so good.
So unique products. I saw you guys also do. You sell all the ingredients to make vinegar, but you also have bottled vinegar that you guys sell as well, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yep. We're gonna try to. We brought the red in is from a local importer, Amphora. Yeah, they're super nice, and the wine's. The vinegar is delicious.
How is that whole? It's kind of new to me. I'll call it food fermentation. We talked about earlier, like kombucha, that kind of stuff. Kefir. I love hot sauce, so that's like a cool one for me.
Yeah,
But
that's
how's that?
easy, good.
Do you guys have a lot of customers that are into that area of food fermentation? I guess.
I wouldn't say a lot.
Okay.
I'd say maybe like 10%, 15%.
Yeah, there's a few that are involved in that, but the main focal point here truly is beer and wine.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, and there's great stores in Berkeley and Oakland for food fermentation.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's cool to see that kind of expand and just what I guess we've learned from beer and winemaking into food, so it's cool to see that segment grow. It kind of leads back to what you were talking about, the health side of things, you know, being conscious, making the products that you're putting in.
Making good decisions.
Making the good decisions, yes, yeah. Note taken. Yeah. You guys weren't my local homebrew store, but I always loved coming here, and one of the reasons I would come is to drop off beers for competitions. So you guys have always been a point for that, and then also, so yeah, do you guys, I guess, speak to that, competitions, and then also festivals. One of my favorite things is Northern California Homebrewers Festival, which is a great festival. Do you guys set up booths at festivals, things like that, or?
We have in the past, but over the years, started figuring out that people went to festivals just to drink. They weren't worried about talking about homebrewing at that point in time. And so that's why we sort of stopped doing the festivals at that point in time. But now, maybe people's idea or thought or train of thought is changing, and it might be something to look into going back to doing. You know, especially now since you can serve homebrew.
Yes.
See, before you couldn't serve it.
Yeah.
See, years ago. Yeah. See, before you couldn't serve it, but now all that's changed within the last 3 years or so. And so, yeah, might be something to look into.
Yeah, especially the NCH, the Northern California Homebrewers Festival I talked about. That one, the local like beer fest, yeah, people are just going to get, you know, drunk, you know. But that one's a camp out event, so it's kind of like Boonville.
Yeah.
Like you get the serious homebrewers that are, you know, there for the education and stuff. So I always find
or to educate.
Huh?
Or to educate.
Or to educate. Yeah, there's a lot of that too. Yeah. Good points.
You know, get into a room full of homebrewers and you have a room full of opinions. And they're all different.
They're all different, yeah.
Which is good,
yeah,
you know,
it's
that's
all
great.
Yeah.
Everybody, that's the kind of the beauty of home brewing is you can do things so many different ways. And there's not really a wrong way. Well, sometimes there's a wrong way.
Yeah, yeah.
Like don't use your hands.
That's one I always loved, and kind of going back to what I was talking about on the commercial level of collaboration, but even on the homebrew level, that's one thing I always enjoyed was going to brew with other people. Because I always learned something. You know, they might do it different, might be right, might be wrong, like you said.
Right.
But I always learned something, you know, like why do you do that? You know, and you talk through that, and that's just a great experience, you know, of just brewing with people. So I encourage brewers get out there and brew with others.
Yeah, and come by our brew days. We do brew days where we have members of the Bay Area Mashers brewing in the parking lot. We'll have like 3 or 4 different setups out there, and then we'll have guest brewers on the 15-gallon system inside.
Awesome, doing like a big, everybody's different systems.
We did
all brewing.
We did it for National Homebrew Day recently, and we've done it for other brew days too. Like just like for SF Beer Week, we didn't have the Bay Area Mashers here for that, but we did have Tom and Santiago, as I said, and we'll be doing more like that because people just love it. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Last time Homer made barbecue, which was delightful. Sean O'Sullivan brought his pizza oven and made a bunch of pizzas.
Oh man, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It did not suck.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You know, we're talking about supporting a local homebrew store. In your guys' words, why is it important to support your local homebrew store?
Community. You build a community, and then you build trust amongst one another. And once you build that trust amongst one another, then ideas and thoughts are going to interchange easily. And therefore, a person's going to learn from that. And they're going to learn a heck of a lot more than just trying to get something over the internet. You know, I mean, you'll have that hands-on see, thought, and experience when you come into the store, and you're able to appreciate when somebody says, well, I want to change my beer around. I want it to have maybe a little more of a honey character to it. Well, you go over and you show them some honey malt. And you say, taste this here, smell it. Well, you can't get that through your computer if you're sitting at home. And so therefore you build up a rapport and you help that person to appreciate that there's more to this than just doing it on your own. You can't learn how to do calculus on your own. You can't learn how to do algebra on your own, but you need somebody to help you with it. And so therefore coming into a store like this and getting their help from someone, it makes all the difference in the world. Whether it's beer, whether it's wine, whatever, you know, in other words, you need to be helped along in any project that you reach out and endeavor to try to do. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for having us here today. Homer, it's an honor. Stacey, it's an honor. Love what you guys are doing. Love everything. I mean, I'm in the presence of legends. There's
only one legend.
So thank you guys. Cheers. Thanks for having us. I appreciate you so much. Keep doing the great work.
Thank you, kind sir.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate you.